Hello and welcome back to another episode of You Want to Do What. Today I've got Mark Narusan on. He's a digital consultant. Hi, Mark.
Hi, Dan. How you doing?
Yeah, good, mate. I'm absolutely sweltering. It's the hottest day it's ever been in the UK for anybody listening to this, and we are carrying on, soldiering on, doing this recording.
Yes, I am melting as well.
So, Mark, should we jump straight in? And do you want to tell everyone a bit about what you do?
Yeah, sure. So current skill sets basically covers web design and development. That's specifically on the WordPress platform. I also do logos and brand identities, social media, posting and outreach strategy, a bit of SEO. But I'm trying more to focus on and covering the real problems faced by business owners, so I can offer a solution. And often those issues that need fixing aren't necessarily creative, so they can often be other business issues. Once you sort of dig a bit deeper, you can sort of find what's really bugging them. So that's currently what I'm doing.
So where did this all begin then? How did you sort of get into this world?
Well, it happened many years ago. It's a fairly long story, but I'll try and cut it down. I started originally actually as a cartographer, working for local government. And I remember applying for a role, and the actual role I wanted was given to someone more senior, but I think they liked me so much they created a new position and offered me the job. So I was sort of chuffed a bit. So I worked in that office, just drawing maps and serving the sort of the council office for any sort of planning applications. And then I can't remember exactly how it happened, but there was an opportunity to go and have a chat with a guy in one of the other offices who published the newsletter in the for the council. So I went along and sort of had a chat, and he sort of showed me what he was doing, and I think he was using a bit of software called PageMaker, which was it was the precursor to InDesign, I think. He was sort of working on the newsletter, and sort of I got really inspired, and he sort of trained me up to sort of edit this newsletter, and then eventually the office I was working in sort of took that over. So that was really my first sort of leap into graphic design, which was sort of my initial skill set before moving on to sort of what I do now. And then we got more interested in creating leaflets and reports for the for the council, but after a while I wanted more than that, so I did a small course, graphic design course, and eventually got a sort of a decent portfolio together, and then went for a job application with the creative agency, and I got that. And I stayed there for a number of years, and that actually blew my mind, because it was run by two partners, but they were super creative and talented. A lot of the work was in the sort of publishing world, so book covers, and I learned tons there about using the software and coming up with ideas. Then I was unfortunately made redundant, and sort of was sort of thrown straight into the freelancing world for probably about a year. So I managed to sort of get a few gigs here and there. And then a company my wife was working at were sort of expanding, and they were looking for someone to do some creative work for them. So I sort of chatted with the boss there, and he created a position there, and basically they were a retail gift company, and I did a lot of point of sale design for them. And then after a couple of years, moved on to work for another agency, which was sort of a full creative agency.
Hmm.
And I did a lot of graphic design layouts for newsletters and reports and things like that, and then got the opportunity to work on a web design for a company. And because the skills from sort of layout for sort of newsletters transfers quite well to web design, I sort of gravitated into that quite easily and really enjoyed it, and got more opportunity to do that. And then discovered WordPress, which is a quite well-known design platform for websites. It's very similar to sort of Wix and Squarespace, and sort of got more interested in that and started to learn little bits and build websites. And then I sort of took those skills with me when I left the agency and started sort of doing freelance work. And when I was confident enough, I then started to offer that skill to businesses, and with my sort of other graphic design skills, was sort of able to offer, the sort of full suite of skills that I offer today.
Wow. So you're kind of, this love of designing, did it all come from somewhere, or was it something you kind of just picked up one day and you're like, wow, actually, I really enjoy doing this?
Well, I've always been creative. I mean, ever since I was a kid. I remember at primary school, I was always doodling and was into dinosaurs and science fiction. And, at the time in the sort of late 70s, the first Star Wars movie came out, and I was drawing pictures of all the characters. And so I've always been creative, but I think I must have obviously had a technical side inside of me as well, which I've sort of applied to the web design and development. So I'm probably more of a web designer than I am a developer, but it comes sort of part and parcel, really. If you're sort of working for yourself, it's good to know both parts.
It's really interesting, isn't it? I think, over the last 5, probably 10 years now, the whole world of designing websites has exploded, because every business needs a website, and people like yourselves, talented people, you can make a real go at this, can't you? It can become a real full-time career, and specializing specifically on that part, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, creating websites has become so much easier now. There's numerous platforms, and I've already mentioned Wix, Squarespace, WordPress, which I use, and Webflow, which I think has come on the market over the last sort of handful of years, which is definitely aimed at designers. So there's little code that's needed to kind of end up with a good result. And obviously for business owners who don't have a budget or fancy having to go themselves, it sort of reopened the doors to people being able to create simple websites without the need to employ a developer like myself.
Do you think there's a better understanding among business owners now that people like yourselves and your expertise, it costs money to get experts in? I think, we've spoken to quite a few creatives, and I think the understanding from business owners is starting to get better, that, you've spent a long time getting really good at what you do. And sometimes business owners don't really understand that value. Do you still come across that? Or do you think the sort of attitude is changing towards, professionals in your kind of work?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Depends on the client. I mean, some clients I've spoken to who are knowledgeable would value what I do as fairly low key, and because they obviously have got some skills themselves, and they would think, okay, can you do these jobs for me on my website? They shouldn't take you very long. Whereas someone who hasn't got any idea how to create a website obviously places a lot more value on what I offer. So they're primarily my target market. I think working with clients who've got a good amount of knowledge in some of the areas that I work in already are really not my target market. because I think what I found in some instances they will try and take over the project, and when the client crosses that line and becomes the designer, then it can be really difficult. So well, hopefully I've got a good instinct for what clients are going to be a good fit now, so I try to avoid working with people like that now.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because this whole world, it kind of gets broken down the longer it exists. And my girlfriend works in e-commerce, and they are always talking about customer journey on the website, where you put links, where you put boxes, where you put calls to action, how fast they scroll. Apparently people don't scroll much past sort of, if it's too long, people won't scroll. They don't want to scroll on websites, apparently. That's something you have to take into consideration. And then you have, experts in UX and UI, and it's really fascinating how it's kind of evolved, and there's specialisms now within specialisms, isn't there?
That's right, totally. For sort of people coming out of college, university, there is a lot of opportunity. I mean, it is very competitive, though. Generally speaking, in the graphic design, web development sort of industry, it is really competitive. But certainly for the sort of web area, you're right, you can specialize in UI, which is actually focused on designing the elements and the layouts and the colors of a page. UX, which is the layout and the user journey and how you interact with the page. And then obviously the coding side, which is web development. And often with businesses, larger businesses, they're employ one person to do each of those different tasks, so that'd be 3 different people, but obviously if you work as an independent or a freelancer, you might have to learn all of those skills, which is useful if you want to start working directly with clients. But it's obviously when you go down the coding route, there's lots of different coding languages available now as well. Half of them I can't even pronounce, but and there is a lot of scope for people to go into that industry.
Can you break down what you do and what parts you do specifically, as a designer working in the kind of, and for the kind of clients you work for, what kind of elements are you doing? Is it UI? Is it UX? Is it a bit of coding? What's the kind of package you usually work with?
Kind of would do them all, really. Because I've naturally gravitated to and in the old days I would just sort of design a website in Photoshop, just do a sort of a flat design and then hand that over to a developer. But as the technology to build websites has become more user friendly, especially for someone like myself who's not a pure website developer, it's meant that I can start building websites, and I've also sort of picked up sort of bits of techniques of code to use, like for style sheet, CSS. So I kind of do everything, really. And I suppose depending on the size of the project, if it was a really large project, then I would probably employ, I'd outsource the development side of things, purely so I can sort of focus more on the design and the interaction and the management of the project.
Mm-hmm. And so what would be maybe two key personality traits that you see in yourself that have helped you to succeed? Can't get my words out today. It's too hot.
Right. I'd say, it helps to be creative. That's one aspect. Being able to have a technical brain, I think, also helps. I think although I'm not, as I've mentioned, that I'm not a pure developer, just knowing how code works has really helps, and also how people interact with websites on a sort of desktop and a mobile sort of level, and being able to get the information onto the page, and know how it's going to size down when you're looking at it on a small screen, because on the small screen now it's become even more important that the website works.
And then I guess for you, what would be the biggest positive you've had so far doing what you're doing now? What do you take away that you're like, do you know what, I love doing this?
I think it's just having the opportunity to work on different things. I think I get bored quite easily, and if I'm just doing one thing all the time, I think I would I think being able to ideally work with a client who doesn't have a clue what they need to do, and I can offer logo design, web design, development, help them with their social media and outreach, and offer a sort of full package. That's sort of my ideal thing that I like, but it's also meeting lots of interesting people, listening to different problems, and trying to come up with a solution. So I like the challenge of working with different businesses, because every problem is different, and I think that's what keeps me motivated.
And then on the flip side of that, what would be something that's maybe less favorable or negative you found about working in the industry?
Well, I think I already mentioned it is very competitive, and I often see in LinkedIn sort of developer roles come up, and I occasionally take a little peek, and I can see there's dozens and dozens of applicants. So I think it is very competitive. Also, I'm having to compete with services that might be offered in overseas, from India, for instance, where they can offer development services for peanuts. But I think overcoming that is knowing that people are working with someone, if they're based in the UK, they're working with someone in the UK who speaks their language and understands the problems they're facing in the UK, which someone overseas might not be able to help with.
And if anyone's listening to this and thinking, do you know what, I'd love to get into this, any advice for them? Maybe courses, or maybe even go to university and study, or maybe don't go to university. Any advice for anyone listening?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm not really sure what they would do through the university routes. I didn't go to university, so I couldn't comment. But I mean, how I've done it is purely learned the stuff myself. I keep learning, looking on YouTube, undertaking courses, building my portfolio up. So I've actually got some physical websites I can show people, get some positive testimonials from clients. I guess that students could try and get internships with some of the bigger agencies. I mean, a lot of them have got the capacity to do that, and I think just keep sort of developing your skills, making mistakes, because that's the best way to learn and progress.
Definitely great advice. And thank you so much for coming on and having a chat. It's been really interesting to hear all about your career. And where can people find you, find your websites, find anything you're up to?
Oh, you're welcome. Enjoyed it. They can visit my website, marknarusan.com, or they can connect to me on LinkedIn, where I'm quite active. Same again, Mark Narusan. That's it.
Brilliant. Thanks again for your time, Mark.
Oh, you're welcome. Great chatting to you.